All right, I'm going to call the Capital Improvement and Planning Committee meeting to order. It is Monday, February 12th, 2024. It is 8:01 p.m. and we have 4 of our 5 voting members here tonight, plus Mark as our ex officio. First order of business is approval of meeting minutes. My understanding is both are still being drafted.
Correct. Yeah,
Um,
12:26.
so we are getting very close and have actually exceeded the 45 days on one of them. So if I can just get the draft whenever you guys have them, we can post those until we meet next and approve them. So I guess my simple request is I don't know when we're going to meet next, but if you could just send me a draft as soon as they're available, we'll be good to go in the meantime. Um, Next order of business is the Neary Building Committee status update. So Mark, that's probably Brian in the waiting room, right? Brian, if that's you,
Yeah, it
just raise
is.
your hand.
Pretty sure it is.
I know it's his incognito name. Um, Near building committee update. So this continues to be a lot going on. The committee is meeting regularly, bi-weekly or monthly, depending on the needs. The two things I wanted to bring to the committee's attention tonight was there's going to be some open forums. For those that have kids in the school, you would have seen a newsletter go out over the weekend. And then there will be, it was posted, I think, on the Southborough blog, and we're finding other ways to post it. This is really a way for the community to start interacting in the process. My only request is if any of you plan to attend, I likely just want to post a meeting to be safe that we may have a quorum there in case we bring any of that back to future discussions that we have. It's the safest way to do it. There's 2 dates. There's simultaneous. This is going to be the same agenda and content at each, but that's really going to be the first chance for the public to start to interact and provide their views on the actual project. So it's February 29th and Monday, the 11th of March, both at 7 o'clock, both at Trotter. And if you know people in the community that are interested, obviously start to point them that way too. Timeline continues to remain the same. The visioning and educational stuff will be done in May. Over the summer, the scenarios will be narrowed so that come fall, we'll likely be talking about kind of what the path forward is. Any questions? Community Center. That committee is now officially done and delivered a final report to the select board. As I had indicated previously, the punchline was that Fin is reusable for multiple community needs and is the preferred option if and only if it becomes available as part of any sort of school consolidation plan. The final report was posted as part of the select board packet. If anyone needs it, can't find it, let me know. But as I kind of said in that meeting, I'll kind of sit on the shelf for now. Questions on that? Pilot committee. I don't think our pilot representative is here tonight, so we will keep going. Meeting with the DOR, Division of Local Services. So Mark and Brian asked me to participate in a meeting with it's basically a self-initiated review by the town of our financial policies, amongst other things. And it's off.
Jason, sorry to interrupt. I think we lost Steve.
We did. You're right. Thank you. I'm going to pause then because we just lost our quorum. Thanks, Jeff.
No problem.
You're back.
Yeah, sorry about that.
That's okay. We lost our quorum when you dropped, so I'm just gonna pick up where I left off. So I was on the meeting with the DOR, Division of Local Services. So I did meet with them. It's just, like I said, it's a self-initiated review by the town, free, I believe, as well, Mark, right? To just provide guidance and best practices of on mainly financial related. They obviously benchmark against other towns and have insight based on other reviews. I do expect some recommendations on things that we can do to update our policy as we move forward in terms of our purely capital policy, but also how that policy interacts with other policies that the town does or doesn't already have more broadly on finance. There was significant discussion on what is a capital item, what our threshold is, the pros and cons of having a capital committee in town, the membership, how engaged the membership is, how we interact with department heads, how we interact with boards and committees that aren't appointed by the select board. I think school committee was one of the examples they used. And the final item they talked a lot about is stabilization, which I know is a topic near and dear to Brian's heart that will likely be coming back very soon, at least for discussion, in terms of where the town wants to go. So I look forward to seeing that report. I have no idea how long it takes unless Mark or Brian know, but I'm glad to see the town's going through it and welcome any constructive feedback they have for us to get better as we go.
May or June, Jason.
Okay. Yeah, they took a lot of notes just in the 59 minutes I was with them. So I can only imagine once they pile that on with all the other discussions. Any questions on that? All right. FY25 budget and town meeting update. So I have asked the select board chair and advisory chair multiple times since the presentation back in January if there's any questions or feedback on the capital presentation. In short, there's none, pending obviously the overall review of the town budget, which is scheduled to occur tomorrow night in a joint meeting with select board and advisory. They were waiting on the final school budget, which I think they've had now for a couple of weeks. I know hasn't been formally approved until tonight, but they knew where that was going directionally. So I do expect, and I don't know when, but it'll likely be right after February vacation that we're going to need to meet again. I do not expect the capital to exist exactly as we had approved it. And obviously, I think we as capital need to take a position if we disagree with any of the positions that end up being taken. Obviously, we don't set the warrant, we don't draft the warrant, but I think it's still important to have a voice if there is dissent, i.e. most likely items are going to get removed or have funding sources changed, would be my expectations based on initial commentary to date. Any questions on that? All right, so stay tuned on that. Brian, Mark, anything to add on that?
No, I think just from my end, it's more of funding sources versus what we're going to go forward with. I think it mostly aligns with what may be supported, except for sidewalk, except for road maintenance. I'm sorry. So that may be an issue, but that's it.
And I think we all know we made some sizable cuts already to road maintenance on what Bill, we kind of think about what Bill had brought forward originally. So I guess we'll come back. I am planning to listen in tomorrow just to kind of see where the conversation goes, but we don't have a posted meeting and I don't expect a quorum there. So any questions before I move on from that? Okay. Main reason for meeting tonight is the select board have been very anxious to get a recommendation from capital on how to appropriate the $700K from ARPA that they had allocated to sidewalks and to what project we believe it should go through. Obviously, with being winter, it's a very tough time for Bill to pull together different iterations and drafts. But you have in front of you what Bill has put together. Full disclosure, I think he went through a few versions before we got to the final version. I was presented with one option originally, and I didn't feel like it was appropriate to discuss just one option, because otherwise you're essentially rubber stamping. Now I have full trust in everything Bill is doing, and I think he's earned that in a short time with the town. But if we kind of look back to the road discussion we had about a year and a half ago, at least for those two that were on capital, it helped to have options, right? To understand the pros and cons and really understand his decision-making process. So that's why you see it presented the way that it is. The other thing I think it's really important for everyone to remember, and Joe probably remembers this like the back of, like yesterday, but there are specific rules on when ARPA needs to be allocated and then spent. We're still fine, but we're starting to creep up on some of that. And Bill mentions that a little bit in one of the first couple paragraphs of his email. So I guess we can take this conversation wherever any of you would like to take it. If you're ready to make a recommendation, if we're supportive of the plan from the DPW superintendent, I have some thoughts, but I wanted to pause and maybe hear any initial reaction first. Go ahead, Joe.
Yeah, why don't I start off? I would like to thank, our DPW superintendent for putting this forward. I think it shows a lot of work, and actually, it shows a lot of worthy candidates. I think the numbers sort of prove that we're sort of a little bit handicapped in the choices that we have based upon the amount of money, as well as the amount of money that's also going to be allocated with that in order to make it possible, because there is going to be extra work. Everybody knows that I live on that, what would be considered that second section, number 12 of Parkerville. But even if they're just doing section 11, I think that's a fabulous choice. It has a bunch of cul-de-sacs off it. It's a feeder road. It's busy, and it's one of the only roads that extends away from Finn that doesn't have a sidewalk. So I think that's a really worthy candidate. I won't speak over to the Richards section. And like I said, there are other roads on here that I think are very worthy and deserving, but I certainly don't disapprove with the choices that they've made or the reasons why they made it.
Other comments or questions?
I guess, no, sorry, Steve. I didn't raise my hand. Okay.
Steve gets to go first because he raised his hand.
No, I think it's a great thing. And I was driving through town last week, kind of mapping things out and taking a look at it. And I think the recommendations put forward are where I think the best use of those funds would go. So I am in agreement.
Yeah, I'm raising my hand.
Go, Jeff.
I guess the concern he voiced over, the superintendent voiced over easements. I guess I don't know how big of an issue that is, if there's been any community solicitation of that. I mean, personally, if I had an easement, I think I'd be okay with it if I was getting a sidewalk, but I don't know how likely or unlikely it would be this would draw criticism from those folks who live around there. Joe expressed approval of it, even though he's not in one specific zone, he's near one, but I don't know if how long that's gonna do what that's gonna do from a holdup perspective and being able to go forward. So that was my only concern. And it was a similar concern that Bill expressed.
So that's a great lead into where I want to go. I one wholeheartedly agree with the direction he's taking this, and I think he's on the right track. My concern is on timing. It's timing on a few things. We're rushing to get this done because there's a timeline on ARPA. There's no question that this town wants sidewalks, and there's no question that they want them on a grand scale. What I'm supportive of tonight is the concept that this is where we should spend our design money and focus on that in very short order, and have Bill actually give us a number of what the actual design is and start to go through the process of, are there easements that we may or may not be able to get without eminent domain? right? I mean, you eventually could get something, it just comes at potentially a cost, right? And there's a whole series of logistics that Bill would need to take over the next 12 months to get to the March of 2025 town meeting to secure those easements and then go out to bid. I think we're cutting it way too close. I'm very skeptical of having this money sit until the final hour of its allotment, because I don't know what mechanisms the federal government does or doesn't have to claw back on unused funding. I believe this is all in our bank account, but Brian or Mark could keep me honest on that. You know, we clearly know the amount and we've known it for some time. I just don't know how the funding works. Do you know the answer to that?
I'll let Brian weigh in on that.
I was gonna say, good question.
So, and I see your hand, Jeff, and I'm just going to play this out and I'll come to you. So let's just assume for a second design's 200K. And obviously Bill mentioned about 650K remaining in the article after doing some of the work that they did with Beta originally. What I would feel far more comfortable doing is asking the select board to allocate this 450 of ARPA funding to capital projects this year that we can spend right now. That comes with a huge but, though. I'm not looking to offset the capital as we move forward, because as we all know from the presentations we've made, we've set the baseline so low over the last couple of years because of, I'll call it, the massaging of the tax rate using ARPA funds. If you just use my hypothetical example, and there's 450 remaining that would be used in ARPA funds to offset this year's capital, I would request, if they went down that road, that they do appropriate 450 to stabilization, so that the 450 is available to be spent for sidewalks or other capital projects down the road. That does require a 2/3 vote, if I'm correct, at a future town meeting, but really kind of get this money out on the street. We have it now, and allow Bill to do continued due diligence to bring the right project at the right time, and to go through the motions, and give him a funding source to go through the motions in the meantime. That's where I'm comfortable right now, but obviously welcome the feedback of others, of what you're comfortable with or not comfortable with. So Jeff, did you
Yeah,
you
you
have
pretty
something to
much
say?
you pretty much read my mind there. What I was going to say, it's almost 6 and 1/2 dozen to me in terms of how we're going to use the money, whether we spend it now or spend it later. So I was going to ask if we could reallocate that money, spend it now, get credit for it from our perspective, and then use that money for something else down the road. So I agree with you, Jason. That's what I thought.
And to be clear, we cannot just take ARPA money and put it into stabilization. That's a big no. So we'd have to allocate it to specific capital projects that we know we're already going to spend money on, and then do the fact we're not spending money on it, reallocate it. Go ahead, Joe. I saw your hand up and down.
Yeah, you sort of made my point, which is I sort of said the same thing in the ARPA committee, and I was warned about, offsetting funds and then putting funds into stabilization in an equivalent form, because that would look like that's exactly what we did. And I don't know if that would, it's an elephant. So we need to make sure that we're not looking like that's what we're doing, because that could be a problem. I might also add some other considerations. I mean, Hopkinton Water hasn't decided or moved forward as much as they might have in a quick fashion. That would also impact, especially that section number 11 on Parkerville, because that's where they wanted to run the main conduit down. So if they just came forward with a plan to run that down in a short order, as we've given them the right to do, that would also give a chance to redesign that road, maybe in a quicker fashion than and as a project than it might have been done on our own. I don't know how that's going to play in or if that's even moving forward, but I'd like to throw that on the table.
I don't think anyone here has an answer to that other than it's a tremendous consideration. I guess Brian or Mark, do you have a reaction to my comment and Joe's follow-up? Was that just something we could confirm with the consultant that Carla's been working with?
Yeah, I think we can have Carla confirm that with the consultant.
Okay. And I guess the other consideration with that is it doesn't have to be dollar for dollar, right? Like, and I think obviously if Brian comes back to us and says the select board wants to bond something that I don't think they should bond, as an example, well, if we can take care of it now, save interest money and stuff like that, and just appropriate the sidewalk money next year, I mean, that's another option, but I am weary of lowering our capital base, right? Which is what this would do if you just straight up reallocated ARPA. And I also think it goes against the wishes of the community in the short term, right? Because that was the most resounding support I've ever seen for anything in this community was around sidewalks, right? During that ARPA study. Granted, obviously it was in different time, but I don't think people's habits in terms of wanting and desire to use them have changed, despite obviously somewhat getting back to normal. Go ahead, Joe.
Well, I think you just brought up a great point as to whether the town wants to move this. If we're going to do sort of as you propose, whether we look in the next year or two of doing some sort of bond and using this as an offset cost to put a bond out there that we're then doing multiple legs of this, maybe even add, something like Oak Hill or another one of those stretches in there that are very worthy of heavy traffic and certainly pedestrian traffic, and add those all into a bond situation and do a bunch of sidewalks at once, using this to offset some of the future costs, maybe, as an idea.
Just to clarify, what's this to offset the future costs?
Well, if we're saying that we're going to donate this into capital purposes now, with the expectation that reallocate with the idea that we're going to be spending this money in a project in a more timely fashion because it's more appropriate to the timeline, then maybe spreading this even a little bit farther and adding one or two other sidewalk projects into that and then bonding it for over several years might make perfect sense and make everybody in the community very happy as we're spreading it a little further, adding more money to it, and making it a bigger initiative in the town.
I'm definitely on board with that. And I also think, right, once we understand where the select board's at on FY25, we all know there are items sitting in the FY26 capital plan that are ripe to be purchased now, right? That second trash trailer is what's coming to mind, right? We know we're going to need it. You can knock the 100,000 out this year, stave off whatever inflation is going to come from that. Or if there's a vehicle that you can, accelerate just a little bit, right? That's another way of dealing with this if we can't deal with the stabilization aspect of this. So is there anyone supportive of doing anything more than design at this point? Go ahead, Joe.
I'd be disingenuous if I said that I wasn't very in favor of that section of Parkerville being done.
Well, I think there's two questions here, right? Is this ready for construction or just design? And then do we agree with the superintendent's priority? Right. So does anyone disagree with the superintendent's priority? Let's start there. In his thought process of how he came up with this. So if I expand that, and I like where Joe was going, the adding on a few more to see what we can get as a broader project is certainly something I think this committee would consider, but I think we were always waiting on Beta to finish their work, as Bill denoted in his thing. So then it comes down to the question of, if we're supportive of this, are we supportive of design fundings for it? Is there anyone opposed to design funding for this?
For this being how many projects?
I would say tell him to take his top three and go design them.
Yeah.
Right. Because let's I don't want to be pessimistic, but there's gonna be an obstacle somewhere in there. It's gonna be some easement that they thought was gonna be easy that wasn't easy, or some tree that's in the way that, could cause an issue. So I don't know what that number is, but I would be in favor of, what he's listed here and not just stopping at the first for design.
Can we get an answer first, though, on Joe's question before we make that decision? Or can we caveat with that? That if it was going to be impacted by the water, then it doesn't make sense to do number one.
Yeah, we can just caveat that any of these shouldn't, as long as they're not impacted by the water project. But I just thinking about that some more, we're not talking about existing infrastructure, right? So we only want to do it once, right? But we're still going to bear the cost of that, of the construction, right? If I'm thinking about this the right way, it's just you don't want to dig up the road twice. Go ahead, Joe.
Yeah, I mean, my point was really that, we should be prepared to put that on that section of Parkerville if they're coming down with the water, because that's the perfect time to do it. So if
Right.
if their timeline meets our timeline, I think we should be prepared to do that section when they do it. That's really where I was going with that.
Okay. But we will not be ready for another year with easements.
And
So
I understand,
yeah,
I do understand that, but the timing of that project is the perfect timing. So if we can meet it at any juncture, I would like to see that done. And I'm perfectly willing to go down there and shake hands with people and say, hey, can we get this done to get the sidewalk in? Because I don't know anybody that doesn't want one. So it's just a matter of getting it done.
understood. Um, so Jeff, just so we can get the answer to that question, but I guess I'm trying to figure out how and what votes we want to take tonight. Um, given that we know we can't do construction for another year to begin with because of the easement issue.
I mean,
Well,
we can,
I'm sorry, go ahead, Jeff.
and we can give a recommendation on the top three, to your point, Jason. If there's an issue with the first one, as an example, then we can just go down to replace it with the fourth or something like that, just like a if then type of situation.
Go
If
ahead,
I
Joe.
if I may throw a log on that fire, I would, I would almost throw number 4 on there as well. I mean, I at least the northern part, because I think I think we should talk with our pilot representative and see if that's sort of something that they would like to, that section of 85 north of the library, given there's a new parking lot there, whether there may be a partner there to offset part of the cost of that particular leg as well, and in the future. And maybe a design of that is something that we could also, if we're going to look in the future and do a bond issue, that having a partner for that section, if that, I can't remember if number 3 is that section, but I think it is. No, it's not. 3 isn't that section. I'm talking about section more part of section 1, whether that would be something to consider doing as well in a bond issue, because we may have another partner that's willing to offset some of that cost. And also for part of number 1, we wouldn't be dealing with multiple stakeholders in terms of liens, or not liens, in terms of in terms of getting permission to do it. We'd really just be dealing with one for about half of section 1, which would make it a lot easier to do as well. So if we were doing a bond issue and throwing in the top 3 and another section, that would be one that I would certainly look into throwing into, if we get cooperation into the mix as well. And that number one would also link the neighborhoods up above as well. Give a link to all those other neighborhoods up and back of there as well. If we went as far as I can't remember what the road is there, but the next road at the
You're talking about
intersection.
his reference to Fairview and Schuyler.
No. I'm not talking about number 11. I'm talking
You're
about
talking
that
about Marlborough Road.
Marlborough Road,
Okay.
where it meets School Street. If you go up 85 to School Street, there's a neighborhood on the hill up over there, which would then also have access and down into the center of town by the library. And given that that's pretty much one property owner for a lot of that stretch, it might be an easy stretch to get done in terms of permission, and might have a financial partner from Pilot, if that's something up for discussion there, given our timeline being several years out. I think that that's also willing to throw into that mix as well. I'm not taking away from my number 11. We all know I love my number 11, but if we're gonna extend out and bond out and add a little bit, I think that's another one that may be pretty expedient to do.
I would, at least for purposes of tonight, like to go back and ask for a budgetary number for 1, 2A, and 2B, and then get the answer on the Hopkinton question, and also get the answer on in reaction from the select board of would they actually repurpose these funds and start chipping away at other items in the capital plan, with the intention that we'd come back with a capital project related to sidewalks next year, once the actual analysis had been done. Because if they say, no, we're going forward on the sidewalk, non-negotiable, then it kind of changes, the element. But I mean, I just got this memo, right before the weekend, and circulated to all of you. So it's still fresh, I think, to all of us. And I think we've learned lessons on just rushing to check a box. And I'd like to be thoughtful of this. And I do think, based on a comment that multiple select board members have made, is they wanted to focus on the south side of town to start, which is, I think, why your list looks like it does here from Bill. 3 out of your 4 are obviously interconnected areas of the south side. Does anyone disagree, agree with that statement?
Agreed.
All right. Anyone interested in any construction funding at this point? Just need to make sure we're all on the same page there. So frame my motion.
If you list my number 11, I'm always going to be in favor for the construction money, but I'm, we're pragmatic, and your point's well made.
All right. So let me try this motion. Someone second it, and then we can talk about it if you don't like it, or want to reshape it. But I'm going to move that CIPC support design funding for options 1, 2A, and 2B, Parkerville Road, Richards Road, Woodland Road, and that any remaining sidewalk money be given strong consideration for reallocation to capital projects that are ready for allocation currently in FY24 or for the FY25 budget, with the expectation that CIPC will work with the DPW superintendent to bring forward a construction article related to 1 or more sidewalk projects for the 2025 annual town meeting after further due diligence has been performed.
Second.
Discussion.
I'm all for it. I like it.
Yeah, someone's going to have to replay the video or listen to the transcript to get the motion. But okay, and then my intention would be to document this and then see when and how the select board want to discuss it. And then obviously Bill's going to have to get money for design. And obviously he can react to the plan as well. But I think he already gave us his reaction in backwards fashion by kind of leading the witness a little bit through his detailed memo. Okay. Ready for a vote? All right, Joe,
Aye.
Jeff,
Aye.
Steve,
Aye.
and I'm I as well. Mark, you think a letter to the select board on that, or how do you want to deal with that?
Yeah, I think a letter probably would be better, Jason.
Okay. They're not going to take it up tomorrow night though, unless they start trying to reallocate some of that money, right?
Yeah, I think they got enough on their plate tomorrow night, so
All right,
that'll
good.
be.
Okay, good. Good answer. All right. I'm seeing no public here for public comment. Does anyone have any other business? All right. So likely mid to late this week, I'll reach out a meeting availability. I have no intention of doing it next week. It would be the following week, at the earliest. Other questions, comments? All right, I'll move to adjourn. Is there a second?
Second.
Second.
All right, second roll call vote, Joe,
Aye.
Jeff,
Aye.
Steve.
Aye.
All right, thanks all for joining. Talk soon.
Thanks, Jason.
Good night.
Yeah.